Moving on to section 10.5 on skeletal muscle fiber types. Our skeletal muscle fibers can be classified based on two things: the type of contraction that's generated and the means for supplying ATP. And we'll see that the type of contraction generated is going to show us differences in power, speed, and duration. So what we mean by power is related to the diameter of the actual muscle fiber, and the speed and duration is going to be related to the type of myosin ATPase that it has, the quickness of action potential propagation, and quickness of calcium relief and reuptake by that sarcoplasmic reticulum. So we are going to compare our fast twitch and slow twitch muscle fibers. Our fast twitch muscle fibers will find are more powerful and have a quicker and briefer contraction than the slow twitch muscle fibers. So let's take a look at that first characteristic, the means for supplying ATP. When we look at oxidative fibers, this means that they will be fatigue resistant. And so in order to have this fatigue resistance take place, we need to have an aerobic cellular respiration, just like we talked about at the end of the previous section. So to supply this type of respiration, we need extensive capillaries around our muscle fiber, a lot of mitochondria, and a large amount of myoglobins that are going to provide oxygen. And we'll see that these slow twitch fibers or oxidative fibers will have a red appearance. Our glycolytic fibers or our fast twitch muscle fibers are going to be fatigable and will use anaerobic cellular respiration. So remember, we only got a few ATP through these processes, whereas with aerobic cellular respiration, we got 30 ATP out of one process. So we'll see that these muscle fibers won't need as many capillaries surrounding them. We won't have as many mitochondria, have just a small amount of myoglobin, but we'll have a large amount of glycogen reserves so that we can break glycogen apart and use the glucose for things like glycolysis. And we'll see that these muscle fibers will be lighter in appearance, so we say that they are white fibers. And we also have other names for these fibers, of course, to make things more complicated. Our slow oxidative fibers are also termed type 1 fibers. Our contractions here are going to be slower. You can see they are this darker red colored muscle in here. They're going to be less powerful, but they are able to have higher endurance. So we can see here that if you are a long distance runner, you may have more of these slow oxidative fibers or type 1 fibers. And they're going to be about half of the diameter of our other fibers. So in the previous slides, we mentioned that power had a lot to do with the diameter of the fibers. So we aren't going to have as much power here. So the smaller diameter, the less powerful the muscle fiber. Now on to our fast oxidative fibers, which are also known as type 2A or intermediate fibers. These muscle fibers contractions are going to be fast and powerful and will primarily use aerobic respiration, but delivery of oxygen is going to be lower to these fibers. They're intermediate in size, which is why they're also called intermediate fibers, and we see that they have a light red color to them. And lastly, for our fast glycolytic muscle fibers, these are also known as type 2X and fast anaerobic muscle fibers. Their contractions are going to be fast and powerful. We can see them over here. And they are going to have contractions that are brief, as the ATP production primarily is going to be anaerobic and doesn't last very long. We'll also see that they are the largest in size. They'll have a big diameter, which means they are very powerful, and they will be white in color. So if you are a sprinter that has that fast, powerful reaction, you might have more of these white fibers. And these are colored white because we have a lack of myoglobin. Not a complete lack, but less. Now let's talk about distribution of these fibers. A single muscle has a mixture of these different fiber types, just like we saw in the previous slide. And there are going to be variations in proportions of the fiber types in different muscle groups. For instance, this histology view is of our hand muscles, and we see that we have a high percentage of our fast glycolytic fibers here for quickness, whereas in an area like our back muscles, we're going to have a higher percentage of those slow red oxidative fibers that'll give us that postural support to be able to maintain for a long time. And then I mentioned this before, but it's worth mentioning again, that our long distance runners may have a higher proportion of these slow oxidative fibers in their legs, whereas our sprinters might have a higher percentage of the fast glycolytic fibers. And this is all primarily determined by genes and partially by training.